Bob Iger is engaged in a battle on multiple fronts to defend control of the Walt Disney Company board of directors. Well, he's just lost a very vocal supporter. Let's talk about Jim Cramer voting for Nelson Peltz on That Park Place. Hello, everyone. I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place. Good afternoon to you, and also good afternoon to Vash Sky. Vash, did you have a good weekend?
I did. It was filled with family, with work, with refreshment, all kind of good things. But I think that's a lot more than Jim Cramer can say about his stock right here. He's not so happy.
Yes, he is not happy, and he's made some interesting comments recently. We'll get into some of his older comments because we're trying to crack this whole situation over the long term. But Jim Cramer is not happy with Bob Iger and not happy with the Disney company. It sounds like his position is centered mostly in the performance of the stock more than the performance of the movies or whether or not he liked the movies or whether or not it's the performance of the parks. I don't think he cares. I think that this is a guy that probably cares more about how much it cost him to buy the stock versus how much he's going to end up selling that stock for. Does that sound fair?
I think so. And look, if you bought the stock when it was at its highest point in various places in 2020, and you're looking at your stock now, it is not in a good position at all.
Right. Over the last year, it was about 120 when Nelson Peltz left the last time, and then it dwindled back down to what it was when below what it was when Bob Chapek was summarily fired by the Walt Disney Company board of directors. It leaves a question of what exactly is the motivation of this board of directors, and were they just waiting in the wings to just give Bob Iger his job back, who, by the way, left very suddenly and ignored the CEO succession process to put Bob Chapek, Bob the Lesser, into place. I don't mean to call him Bob the Lesser, but he's been there for less time, at least in the CEO role, than Bob Iger.
Much less time, yeah. and it was it was fraught with trouble, obviously, some of it which instigated by Iger himself, interestingly enough. But yeah, and look, Jim Cramer himself wasn't the biggest Chapek fan himself. I believe there's a quote out there around that time, and I guess she was conversing with Christine McCarthy, interestingly enough, the then CFO of the company, talking about that Chapek should step down, and he wasn't necessarily all that enthusiastic with management at the time. But
right.
Now he is kind of altered his tune a little bit and says this board has to go.
Right, which just to emphasize that, I think you said it, but I'm going to emphasize it for the audience. Jim Cramer seemed to have the personal contact info of Christine McCarthy back in the day. I think he'd like that very much from a financial standpoint. I'm not alleging anything here outside of a business relationship here, but I think that Cramer had a direct line to the CFO at the time. Now, he might have some kind of contact with the current CFO, which is Mr. Hugh Johnston from PepsiCo.
I believe that report, by the way, came from the Alex Sherman article that detailed in that very long expose about Iger and Chapek and those dealings and relationships, by the way, which a lot of people who watch our show are big fans of the hippo comment, right, or the two showers. That part of that article lists that Cramer and Christine McCarthy were very chummy.
Right. And also, I do believe that article said that Christine McCarthy was unavailable to comment on this expose. So it's a fascinating thing. We've never gone through the full list of who was definitely not the person to spill the beans there. But what we want to get to is Jim Cramer's most recent comments before we get to a midpoint here. Vash, I do believe you have those.
This is out of CNBC, I guess. They have an investment club, which Jim Cramer has a big part in, and he's saying, quote, "We're going to vote the blue card." And that was said at the second annual club meeting in New York City. Jim said he respects the board members individually, but, quote, collectively in that boardroom, they're just not that impressive. This is a board that owns very little stock. So this is interesting because Nelson Peltz has said those exact comments right there, saying, hey, they've got no skin in the game. How can you trust them representing the wants and needs of shareholders if they themselves aren't shareholders themselves?
Mm-hmm. Right, and of course the two new incoming shareholders, Mr. Gorman and Mr. Darish, sorry, Sir Jeremy, as he probably is called over there in the UK. They don't currently own a lot of Walt Disney Company stock. I think the SEC filings indicate they in fact own no stock. It remains to be seen whether or not they will take their compensation from the board. Sorry, from their board duties in stock. I think they'll be garnering probably $250,000 apiece for various board duties. That being said, I do want to point out that Jim Cramer, being very diplomatic, says that he does respect the board members individually, but collectively as a board for the Walt Disney Company, they're just not that impressive.
And I would have to agree. I mean, this is a board that we just talked about the upheaval, right, between the board and Chapek, and they're going to put their allegiance behind this guy, and then less than 4 months later, they completely throwing him out the window there in order to get Bob Iger back, according, I guess, to reports at that time that they were saying that they were standing behind Chapek. They were also trying to court other people for that role. Like, I mean, it's just, this board is all over the place. We've talked about how. Oh, go ahead, John.
No. This is very important. The board unanimously voted on the first day of the board retreat to have Bob Chapek stay for 3 more years, to extend him early in the session. A unanimous decision to keep him for 3 years. This was obviously a political move to try to project strength to those outside of the company, to say no, and also to the employees of the company to say, we believe in Bob Chapek. We now understand that might not have been the case.
Oh, of course. And you can kind of see this a little bit, even without some of these reports, with some of the shifting around of players. Like Susan Arnold, for instance. We have heard that she was kind of in Chapek's camp and kind of attempting to suggest to the board that it's important to put our support behind him. That way, like you said, he kind of props him up, so to speak, right there. And well, now she's leaving because apparently anybody associated with the Chapek era has to be removed.
Right. She committed the cardinal sin at the Walt Disney Company, and that she was Bob Iger's successor. And that is unforgivable as far as Bob Iger is concerned, as executive chairman. For those of you who are not aware of that, Susan Arnold, who was actually diverse, she was LGBT and a woman on the board, and she was white, but they will forgive her of that uncheckmarkable status there.
And the right hand of Chapek himself, right? That was the first major firing that Iger instituted when he took back the seat. Kareem Daniels, he was let go. So there's definitely been a history of this, of this very chaotic nature at the top of C-suite here. And I think that's what Jim Cramer's talking about. He goes on to say, "It is ridiculous to me that Netflix has crushed Disney," Jim said. "With that brand name and those theme parks, come on." So he's kind of looking at it like we are, like, hey, this should be far more valuable.
Right.
In the eyes of investors, there's some great brands here. And I mean, I believe Braden from Mickey Views just came out with a video talking about the revenue generation of the theme parks themselves and how those are still a massive profit center for Disney. And yet their business performance hasn't necessarily reflected the value of their assets.
Right. And this is a fascinating statement. Even Nelson Peltz is saying they are over-earning in the parks, which is that can be a very confusing statement to shareholders, to say that the Walt Disney Company is making too much money. Maybe he's saying that they're not providing enough value in the parks and that they are getting a little long in the tooth. That was another one that was stated there. Maybe too much of those profits are going to other things other than their main revenue generating apparatus, which is, as Disney called it themselves in Saving Mr. Banks, their money printing machines.
They are, and this is Michael Eisner, when he took the reins, this is when we really get to see the explosion of the ticket price, for example, because I think Michael Eisner knew that you could utilize the parks to fuel your creative ambitions throughout the entire company, right? And we saw those funds actually put to pretty good use, although we did pay for it. Iger has just taken this to the extreme, especially around the Chapek era, to earn so much from the parks and funnel those into just dying businesses like Disney Plus, for example. I mean, it really has created a very volatile situation for them. Jim Cramer says this is a classic situation where there's a lot more value, but it has to be brought out by others, not by management. I hate losing money.
Well, I hate that cynical view, but at the same time, it has a place. If you are going, unless the Disney company was a private company with its own interests, then okay, that's fine. But if you're going to be a publicly traded company, you have a duty to the shareholders to be as reasonably profitable as possible, or to have buy-in from all of your shareholders. Right now, I don't think they have buy-in from all of their shareholders. 66% of the Walt Disney Company is held by institutional shareholders. That means like pension funds and mutual funds and things like that. And those are not supposed to operate as if they are, trying to change the world. They're supposed to operate as if they are supposed to extract profit in order to fund all of these shareholders, a lot of mom and pops and people who are trying to retire on that money, or maybe people that are interested in Disney from that cultural standpoint. But the duty, if you are publicly traded, is to try to be profitable. Now, of course, long term, that means you can't be horrible and just try to squeeze every last drop out of everyone. It means that you need to balance between that long term and that short term. Yes. I don't think Disney right now is balancing out for the long term. They're Moana 2, Toy Story 5, Frozen 3 and 4, and Mufasa, the Lion King remake prequel. These are not, I don't think these are long-term brand investments. I view these about the same way that I would view Hunchback of Notre Dame 2.
Yes, I very much agree with you. You can see that these are like last minute. What is it? The term that Peltz uses, election day decisions right here. I mean, this is bizarre. We heard about Moana 2 being adapted from a Disney Plus series to a film, and without even the voice cast locked down. And apparently that also. That also extends to the Mandalorian film, which gets to a video that we are going to note in future coverage. So stay tuned for that.
Right, and we've got a lot to cover today, so we're going to be wrapping this up very shortly. But there's two comments that I want to get to. First of all, there's one from Jim Cramer saying this company is just not being run properly. The board oversight is awful. Jim agrees, and the stock's terrible track record reflects the oversight issue. This is Peltz talking to Jim Cramer. The club has felt this pain as longtime shareholders. That would be Jim Cramer's investment club. And he's made a very good point that over the long period, the S&P 500 has outperformed Disney. So why is Disney indicative of the entire entertainment industry as far as the S&P? So we do have one comment live from Jim Cramer. It's from a month ago, but Vash, if you would go ahead and play that.
And this was a bad move for anybody who bought it, including me. And the numbers are awful. And they like the independent voices that are coming in. But no, he doesn't think it's enough. And remember, he's got $3 billion worth of stock, and he's got Mr. Perlmutter's stock. Part of that Mr. Perlmutter I've known for a very long time, and he's got a big position. Obviously, he's not. Anybody who's happy is brain dead. Yeah, well, I'm really happy with the loss. This was a really good loss. I don't like the playoffs. I'm going for a draft pick. Well, there's no draft pick if you own Disney. You don't get the draft pick.
I guess Jim Cramer has had some contentious thoughts concerning the Walt Disney Company and its management for a while.
Right. I guess we could have predicted this if we were paying attention to Jim Cramer's comments, and maybe I'll be paying attention more to what Jim Cramer personally says on this issue. The idea that you have to be brain dead to be happy with what Disney is doing right now. That's saying a lot. Now, he did say that when the stock price was at 90, and I think currently it's at 108. No financial advice here on the channel. I need to just make sure we say that. But of course, we want to throw it out to the audience. What do you think of this whole situation? Are you scared that Jim Cramer is now supporting Nelson Peltz, actually, according to some of the folk rules that are out there about Jim Cramer? Or do you have anything else you would like to say here in the comment section? Like this video if you like this video. Share it out if you know someone who might be interested in this issue here with Peltz and Iger and Jim Cramer and CNBC. And of course, consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.